This article was downloaded by Wayne State University on September 7, 2015, ed. 1421 Publisher, Routledge Informa Ltd registered in England and Wales registered number 107-2954 registered office 5 Howick Place London, SW1P1WG. Journal of the American Planning Association. Publication details, including instructions for authors and subscription information, http://www.tandfonline.com/loi/rjpa20. Planning Consultants in Local Planning. Carolyn G. Lowe and Richard K. Norton. ABAB. Department of Urban Studies and Planning, Wayne State University. University of Michigan. Published online, March 13, 2014. To cite this article, Carolyn G. Lowe and Richard K. Norton, 2013, Planning Consultants in Local Planning, Journal of the American Planning Association, 79:2, 138-147, doi, 10.1080/0194436.2013.883251. To link to this article, http://dx.doi.org/10.1080/0194436.2013.883251. Please scroll down for article. Taylor and Francis makes every effort to ensure the accuracy of all the information, the content, contained in the publications on our platform. However, Taylor and Francis, our agents and our licensors, make no representations or warranties whatsoever as to the accuracy, completeness, or suitability for any purpose of the content. Any opinions and views expressed in this publication are the opinions and views of the authors, and are not the views of or endorsed by Taylor and Francis. The accuracy of the content should not be relied upon and should be independently verified with primary sources of information. Taylor and Francis shall not be liable for any losses, actions, claims, proceedings, demands, costs, expenses, damages, and other liabilities whatsoever or howsoever caused arising directly or indirectly in connection with, in relation to or arising out of the use of the content. This article may be used for research, teaching, and private study purposes. Any substantial or systematic reproduction, redistribution, reselling, loan, sublicensing, systematic supply, or distribution in any form to anyone is expressly forbidden. Terms and conditions of access and use can be found at http://www.tandfonline.com/page/terms-and-conditions. 138. Planning Consultants in Local Planning. Roles and Values. Carolyn G. Lowe and Richard K. Norton. Downloaded by Wayne State University at 1421 September 7, 2015. Problem, research strategy, and findings. Planning consultants are a vital part of the local government planning process. We explore who hires consultants, the types of tasks that they typically perform, and differences in the values of planning consultants and their clients. We conduct parallel surveys of planning consultants and local government officials, and find that the use of consultants is widespread. They are hired primarily to reduce the costs of maintaining in-house planning staff and to provide as-needed technical expertise. Both planning officials and consultants agree on the priority given to well-accepted planning principles, even though each group thinks they hold planning principles in higher esteem than the other. Yet, we find that the actual differences between the self-professed values of the two groups are negligible. Takeaway for practice. This study suggests that both consultants and their clients believe that the advantages of hiring consultants, including supplementing in-house staff, providing workforce flexibility, and offering technical expertise, outweigh the disadvantages of possibly higher costs and lack of local knowledge. The study provides reasons for optimism that outsourcing planning work does not change the underlying planning values of the agencies employing the consultants, or the goals and objectives of the planning work. Keywords: consultants, land use planning, planning practice, governance research support, Wayne State University College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. About the authors: Carolyn G. Lowe, CGLO at wayne.edu, is an assistant professor in the Department of Urban Studies and Planning at Wayne State University. Her. P. Planning consultants have provided services to governments and business groups at least as far back as Burnham's 1909 Plan of Chicago, McClendon, 2003, Silver, 1996. 100 years later, two facts are clear: planning processes have become more sophisticated and local governments rely heavily on planning consultants to provide expertise in a variety of ways. McCann, 2001, Norton, 2005, Sokolow, 1987. What is not clear is the relationship between those facts. What role do planning consultants play in the local planning process? Do planning consultants and their governmentally employed counterparts have different perceptions of the advantages and disadvantages of using consultants? Finally, how different are the values of these two groups? Roughly 22% of planners work for private consulting firms, APA/AICP, 2012. Yet, we lack a systematic and rigorous understanding of the role that planning consultants play. Who do planning consultants typically work for and what do they typically do? What are the most important aspects of consultant-client relationships? Do planning consultants and planners that work for governmental organizations share professional perspectives, or are there wide gaps in their value systems? Given the increasing level of outsourcing occurring in local planning departments, Grigen, 2010, McCann, 2001, this is an important and yet surprisingly neglected issue in the field. We present the results of two parallel surveys of planning consultants and public officials to explore who hires consultants and the types of tasks that consultants typically perform. We examine differences in how consultants and their clients view the advantages and disadvantages of engaging private consultants. Finally, we also examine the professional planning values and perspectives of both planning consultants and the planning officials who hire them. We find that the use of consultants by public agencies is widespread. They most commonly use consultants for large-scale projects, such as preparing. Research interests include land use, the planning process, implementation, intergovernmental cooperation, and regional planning. Richard K. Norton, R.K. Norton at umich.edu, is an associate professor and chair of the Urban and Regional Planning Program at the University of Michigan. His research interests include planning law, land use and environmental planning, intergovernmental growth management, and coastal area resources management. Journal of the American Planning Association, Volume 79, Number 2, Spring 2013, doi 10.1080/0194436.2013.883251. Copyright American Planning Association, Chicago, IL. Lowe and Norton, Consultants in Local Planning. 139. Downloaded by Wayne State University at 1421 September 7, 2015. General or comprehensive plans. Consultants and agency staff agree on many advantages to using consultants, but disagree on whether consultants are more cost-effective and better at citizen participation efforts. Both groups feel that the advantages of hiring consultants outweigh the disadvantages. Although each group perceives significant differences in the planning values they hold compared with those of the other group, the actual differences between the two groups' self-professed values are negligible. Besides shedding light on a little-studied aspect of planning practice, the results of this study offer guidance on the most productive ways for local governments to use consultants, and reasons for optimism that outsourcing planning work does not change its underlying planning values. In the following sections, we describe what is known about planning consultants in the literature, describe our survey approach and data analyses, and discuss our findings on the role of consultants, the perceived advantages and disadvantages of hiring planning consultants, and the perspectives and values of planning consultants and agency staff. We then assess the implications for planning practice and scholarship and describe the need for additional research in this area. The time to complete the task, and because consultants had greater expertise than staff did on some technical aspects of the process. What is the value of hiring planning consultants? A 1993 Planning Advisory Service, PA, report, Kelly, 1993, suggests that there are several important benefits to hiring consultants, including supplementing staff time and skills, ensuring objectivity and credibility, accessing new skills, and handling legal requirements. In addition to these practical reasons, Hanna, 2005, finds that the communities hired consultants because they were perceived to be objective and, more important, to project objectivity throughout the process. What problems are associated with hiring planning consultants? One common, although not well tested, assertion is that consultants offer a cookie-cutter product, which Carr and Servan, 2009, conclude often lead to poor results. Norton, 2005, finds that many of the consultant-written plans in coastal North Carolina were formulaic, 2005. Silver, 1996, reports that early 20th century planning consultants provided a packaged formula that appealed to a wide variety of clients, p. 79. Local officials may also use consultants to deflect anger over politically unpopular decisions or exclusive or opaque processes, even firing consulting firms to appease voters. Dalton, 1986, Hibbard and Lurie, 2000. Background. There are few existing studies of planning consultants other than our own work. Some studies specifically exclude consultants, Gard, 2008. Others do not make a distinction between consultants and planners who are employed by a local government or agency. Deal and Skively Slaughterback, 2009, Howe, Abbott, and Adler, 2004. Some case studies do mention the participation of consultants and describe their actions, e.g., Birch, 1980, Kanan and Hennessy, 1985, Punter, 2003, Reardon, Green, Bates, and Keeley, 2009, Skively, 2007. However, none of these researchers make planning consultants their primary topic of study. Do planning consultants have the same values as local public sector planners? On a theoretical level, Grigen, 2010, suggests that planners ultimately derive legitimacy from their employment by the state or an arm of the state, since planning claims to act in the public interest. Consultants thus destabilize the traditional conceptualization of what a planner is, since they claim to represent the public interest yet are part of the private sector. Dalton, 1986, in one of the few studies that speaks directly to the influence of consultants on the planning process, finds that consultants can contribute to a rational bias in planning that emphasizes expertise and efficiency. None of this work, however, speaks to whether public officials and planning consultants differ systematically with regard to their attitudes about what constitutes good planning practice or appropriate planning goals. So, we investigated these and other, more general questions about planning consultant activity through parallel surveys of public officials and planning consultants. What do planning consultants do? Several scholars note that governments hire consultants to increase local government capacity, extending and supplementing staff expertise. Sokolow, 1987, finds that consultants build capacity for small local governments, providing technical assistance, training, and information. P4. Norton, 2005, finds that local governments in North Carolina hired consultants either because they lacked large planning staffs of their own, or because consultants had particular technical skills localities lacked. Hanna, 2005, finds that communities hired consultants to help write comprehensive plans because staff did not have. 140 Journal of the American Planning Association, Spring 2013, Volume 79, Number 2. Our approach. We conducted a pair of surveys in late 2010 and early 2011 to more thoroughly and systematically understand the role that planning consultants currently play in the local planning process, their values, and their relationships with clients. We introduced the surveys to our sample by email, with a link to the online survey. The first survey was of local government planners and officials, people who are likely to hire and work with planning consultants. As shown in Table 1, we drew our sample from 2 APA Division listservs, the City Planning and Management Division and the Small Town and Rural Planning Division. The managers of these 2 listservs sent an email to the entire list on our behalf, explaining the survey and providing a link. They also sent out one reminder email. Only those whose governments engaged the services of consultants currently or had done so in the last 5 years were invited to answer questions about their experiences with consultants. 399 of the 509, or about 78%, had. Those that had not interacted with consultants as clients recently answered a question to explain why they had not done so, then skipped to the basic descriptive information at the end of the survey. In addition, we included the top appointed official, top elected official, and planning director, or planner or zoning administrator if there was no planning director, of each municipality in Michigan, Maryland, and Oregon. These individuals all received a personalized email inviting them to take the survey, and 2 reminder emails. These 3 states provide a roughly representative sample in terms of the prescriptiveness and policy focus of state planning mandates. Oregon is known to have unusually strong state leadership on planning, Michigan has particularly weak leadership, and Maryland is somewhere in between the two. Burby and May, 1997. This sampling approach assured us some geographic diversity in our sample as well as some depth in the positable one. Survey response rates. Response rate 13%, 24%, 19%, 23%, 25%, 23%. Downloaded by Wayne State University at 1421 September 7, 2015. Tions of local public official respondents, i.e., not just planners. However, because of the small scale of the sample, we do not distinguish responses in terms of the respondent's location or administrative position, and so we present aggregated results only and do not draw conclusions at the state level. Our total sample size for officials was 2,631, with 509 responses, 19%. Our second survey was directed at planning consultants themselves. We used a 2-pronged approach to find consultants. In our government survey, we asked respondents for the names of planning consultants they had worked with, and then sent them a personalized email with the link to the consultant survey. We also sent this survey to the APA Private Practice Division listserv via the listserv manager, with one reminder. Our total sample size for consultants was 209, with 68 responses, 23%. These response rates were somewhat disappointing, as Table 1 indicates, although they are not unusually low for an online-only survey. Koplowitz, Hadlock, and Levine, 2004. Because we were unable to systematically identify specific consultants working for given localities, the responses were aggregated by respondent type, i.e., public officials and consultants, rather than as paired responses. Who consultants work for and what they do. Planning consultants overwhelmingly work for public clients. 42% of consultant respondents reported that 3/4 or more of their business is with public clients. 61% of government respondents reported that their communities currently use consultants. Of those that did not use planning consultants, 55% reported the primary reason was that in-house staff was capable of handling all of the community's planning needs. Consultant respondents in our survey reported that they are typically hired by an appointed executive, 57%, or elected legislative body, 41%, but they spend most of their time at the client community interacting with in-house planning staff, 41%, or the Planning Commission, 27%. Clearly, both staff planners and planning consultants may be responsible to multiple clients in different ways. Kolodny, 2007. This is, no doubt, why the 1993 APA PAR report on hiring planning consultants cautions that the consultant must be told who the ultimate client is. Kelly, 1993, p. 25. 48% of consultants reported that, in general, their clients do not have their own planning staff, and that consultants fill that role. These types of arrangements may be long-term retainer situations, where the consultant sample responses officials, APA listservs, officials, contacted by CUS, total officials consultants, APA listserv, consultants, contacted by CUS, total consultants 1,158 1,473 2,631 209 81 290 156 353 509 48 2068. Notes: APA equals American Planning Association, CUS equals Wayne State Center for Urban Studies. Lowe and Norton, Consultants in Local Planning. 141. Table 2. Planning consultants' tasks for clients. Officials who have used consultants for this task in the past 5 years. Task: long range, comprehensive or master, planning, editing existing and/or writing new zoning ordinances, gathering community input, comprehensive zoning ordinance update, site plan review, rezoning applications, mapping and GIS, other environmental impact analysis, hazard mitigation planning. Consultants who reported performing this task for clients, rank: 82%, 1, 71%, 3, 79%, 2, 65%, 4, 59%, 5, 56%, 6, 54%, 7, 50%, 8, 37%, 9, 25%, 10. Rank: 53%, 1, 37%, 2, 31%, 3, 31%, 4, 29%, 5, 21%, 6, 20%, 7, 15%, 8, 11%, 9, 9%, 10. Downloaded by Wayne State University at 1421 September 7, 2015. Handles everything from site plan review to planning commission meetings to long-range comprehensive planning. Another large percentage, 45%, reported supplementing the work of local government staff. From the public sector perspective, planners and officials reported that, by far, the most common task that consultants performed for them is long-range, comprehensive or master planning. Most of our public sector respondents had used consultants for this task, as Table 2 shows. Public officials reported that the next most common task was editing existing zoning ordinances or writing new ordinances. The day-to-day over-the-counter planning tasks of site plan review and rezoning applications were much more likely to be handled by in-house staff if present. Table 2 shows considerable agreement between clients and consultants as to which tasks the consultants typically handle. The similarity in the rank order of the various tasks conducted is notable, even though the percentages differ somewhat. In fact, the only difference in rank order is that consultants reported conducting public participation activities. Table 3. Advantages of using consultants. As their second most common task, while officials reported it as the third. Both officials and consultants reported that long-range, comprehensive planning is the most common task consultants perform for their clients. More specifically, 80% of consultants reported that when they are involved with such a plan, it involves preparation of the entire plan. Advantages and disadvantages of using planning consultants. We asked both consultants and local government respondents to indicate how strongly they agreed or disagreed with a list of statements describing potential advantages of using planning consultants. As Table 3 shows, local government respondents most strongly agreed that consultants could supplement in-house staff, provide government with greater workforce flexibility, and offer greater technical expertise than in-house staff. A slim majority reported that consultants produced better products. Officials' advantages of using consultants supplement in-house staff: greater workforce flexibility, greater technical expertise, produce better products, more experience with public participation, less expensive than staff. Agree, rank, 95%, 1, 77%, 2, 72%, 3, 54%, 4, 49%, 5, 30%, 6, disagree 3%, 15%, 24%, 41%, 45%, 62% agree, rank, 100%, 1. NA 93%, 2. 88%, 4. 90%, 3. 68%, 5. Consultants disagree 0%, 7%, 12%, 10%, 33%. 142 Journal of the American Planning Association, Spring 2013, Volume 79, Number 2. We also provided an open-ended option for respondents to offer their own ideas on the advantages of hiring consultants. Only 87 of the respondents chose to write a response, and the responses varied. Roughly 11% used the phrase "take the heat" to describe how consultants might be used as cover for a difficult or unpopular political decision. Not surprisingly, as Table 3 shows, consultants perceived that the use of their services was highly beneficial for their clients. But consultants believed that they provided several advantages with which their clients were less likely to agree. 90% of consultants believed that they had more experience with public participation than their clients did, but only 49% of clients agreed. Similarly, roughly two-thirds of consultants agreed that consultants in general provide services less expensively than do in-house staff, almost exactly the inverse of the response of public officials to that same question. About 41% of the government officials surveyed indicated that they were not currently using planning consultants. Of those, about 39% had not used a planning consultant within the past 5 years. Of the approximately 22% of total respondents who did not currently and had not recently used a consultant, about 55% indicated that they have sufficient in-house staff capacity, 20% indicated they had not done so because of financial constraints, 18% indicated there was not enough need for planning in the community to require use of a consultant, and 7% indicated they had not engaged a consultant for other reasons. None indicated that they had not engaged a consultant because no consultants were available. We also asked local government respondents to indicate how strongly they agreed or disagreed with a series of statements listing potential disadvantages of using consultants. As Table 4 shows, local officials reported that the greatest disadvantage of using consultants was their lack of. Table 4. Disadvantages of using consultants, reported by public officials. SA less control over process, less control over outputs, more expensive consultants lack local knowledge, consultants pursue their own agendas 3%, 32%, 5%, 35%, 15%, 62%, 17%, 68%, 4%, 27%. Downloaded by Wayne State University at 1421 September 7, 2015. Local knowledge. Although only about 17% strongly agreed that this was a disadvantage. Most local officials also felt that consultants could be more expensive than using in-house staff. Interestingly, most respondents disagreed with the statements, asking in different ways if a lack of control by the public agency over the consultant was a disadvantage. About two-thirds of respondents did not feel that this was a disadvantage of using consultants. We asked consultants what they felt were the most significant problems with the consultant-client relationship. This was a different question than the one we asked officials about disadvantages of hiring consultants. The results are shown in Table 5. Consultants seemed to think that the relationships functioned well, i.e., not many agreed with negative statements about such relationships. Consultants most commonly reported the difficulty of working through political disputes in the client community, 76%, followed by the failure of clients to follow consultant advice, 49%. The advantages of using consultants seem to outweigh the disadvantages for both consultants and public officials. Few officials had either terminated an ongoing retainer arrangement, 86% had not, or a particular project contract, 90% had not. Of those that had fired a consultant, 55% reported that it was because the consultant's work was below standard. Planning values and perceptions, not as different as they think. To understand the values and perceptions of consultants and officials, we presented both with the same set of questions about a selection of planning principles, including action-oriented or procedural principles, e.g., the use of public participation, and several substantive principles. A 29%, 30%, 47%, 51%, 23%. D 57%, 66%, 55%, 63%, 24%, 29%, 26%, 29%, 53%, 64%. SD 9%, 8%, 5%, 3%, 12%. DK 2%, 2%, 9%, 3%, 9%. Notes: SA equals strongly agree, A equals agree, D equals disagree, SD equals strongly disagree, DK equals don't know. Lowe and Norton, Consultants in Local Planning. 143. Table 5. Problems with the consultant-client relationship, reported by consultants. SA unclear who controls process. Political disputes within community. Consultant and client disagree on goals. Client fails to follow advice. Consultants lack of local knowledge. 2%, 27%, 19%, 86%, 2%, 29%, 4%, 49%, 8%, 31%, 23%, 48%, 67%, 45%, 43%, 52%, 19%, 2%, 27%, 54%, 71%, 8%, 0%, 57%, 13%, 19%, 17%, 0%, A 25%, D 53%, 74%, 6%, 6%, SD 21%, DK 0%. Downloaded by Wayne State University at 1421 September 7, 2015. Notes: SA equals strongly agree, A equals agree, D equals disagree, SD equals strongly disagree, DK equals don't know. Or planning goals, economic development, open space conservation, and affordable housing. We used the substantive principles as proxies for the widely accepted 3 E's of sustainable development, i.e., economy, environment, and equity, although we did not draw out this link in the survey instrument itself. We asked how much importance do you place on each of the following, measured as high, medium, or low in general, not relative to the other items listed. Then we asked respondent their perception of how much importance the other group places on each as a group, i.e., public officials, if a consultant, or consultants, if a public official. Unfortunately, although each survey was directed expressly to a respondent as a member of a particular professional group, i.e., each was surveyed in his or her role as either a public official or consultant, we did not ask respondents to estimate the importance that their own group, public officials or consultants, places on each principle, only how he or she individually values the principle. We discuss the implications of this wording below. We conducted a series of t-tests to compare these responses. T-tests compare means across groups or individuals, or for different responses for the same individual, to see if there are significant differences. In this case, we wanted to see if a respondent's self-reported planning values were significantly different from his or her perception of the values of those planners in the other group. In comparing the same respondent's answers for himself or herself and the other group, consultants or clients, we used dependent t-tests, since a respondent's answers for himself or herself might be related at least somewhat to, or not entirely independent of, his or her answers for the other group. In comparing mean answers between the two groups, we used independent t-tests. The results are summarized in Tables 6 and 7. Table 6 reports the actual means, the t-statistic, and the p-value, which indicates the significance of the difference between the means. Our minimum standard for reporting significance is a less than 10% chance that the difference in means was the result of pure chance, 0.1 level, but we regard differences that have less than a 5% chance of occurring by chance as more meaningful, 0.05 level or 0.01 level. We indicate the level of significance, if any, in Table 7. Individual respondents in each group profess to place more importance on many planning principles than they believe the other group did. For example, consultants and officials both think that they personally place more importance on public participation than does the other group in general. This is also true for open space conservation, vertical consistency, i.e., consistency with plans at other levels of government, for example, county or state, horizontal consistency, i.e., consistency with neighboring jurisdictions' plans, and intergovernmental cooperation, i.e., cooperation with other jurisdictions. At the same time, consultants believe that they and their clients both place similar amounts of importance on economic development, while officials believe that they and their consultants place similar amounts of importance on affordable housing and collecting quality data. Interestingly, both officials and consultants think that consultants place significantly more importance on the use of innovative planning techniques. Both officials and consultants also think that consultants place more importance on affordable housing, although this result is only significant at the 0.10 level. In summary, we find that respondents in general have a higher opinion of their own commitment to these planning principles than the commitment of others with whom they interact. But if we compare their responses about themselves directly, we see that there are actually few, self-reported. 144 Journal of the American Planning Association, Spring 2013, Volume 79, Number 2. Table 6. Comparing consultants' and officials' views on planning issues, T-test results. Question: how much importance do you, your consultants, place on the following? Public participation, open space conservation, affordable housing, economic development, innovative planning techniques, collecting quality data, vertical consistency, horizontal consistency, intergovernmental cooperation. Question: how much importance do you, your clients, place on the following? Public participation, open space conservation, affordable housing, economic development, innovative planning techniques, collecting quality data, vertical consistency, horizontal consistency, intergovernmental cooperation. Consultants' view of themselves mean 2.71, 2.48, 2.18, 2.55, 2.49, 2.5, 2.39, 2.18, 2.45. Officials' view of themselves mean 2.76, 2.32, 2.02, 2.64, 2.16, 2.44, 2.34, 2.06, 2.40. Consultants' view of officials mean 2.45, 2.08, 1.49, 2.45, 1.71, 1.83, 1.69, 1.42, 1.63. Officials' view of consultants mean 2.41. 2.21, 2.01, 2.30, 2.46, 2.37, 2.09, 1.85, 1.86. Paired T-test, T-statistic 2.16, 4.066, 0.810, 0.967, 0.596, 0.136, 0.816, 0.577, 0.07. Paired T-test, T-statistic 8.53, 2.250, 0.226, 0.845.33, 1.334, 0.894, 0.12, 10.59. P-value, two-tailed, 0.0360, 0.00020, 0.00000.3411, 0.00000, 0.00000, p-value, two-tailed, 0.0000, 0.0254, 0.8259, 0.0000, 0.0000, 0.1858, 0.0000, Degrees of freedom 48, 47, 48, 48, 48, 47, 48, 48, 48. Degrees of freedom 311, 276, 260, 276, 279, 300, 290, 278, 277. Downloaded by Wayne State University at 1421 September 7, 2015. Note: responses were recorded, scored, as follows: high, 3, medium, 2, low, 1. Differences in the issues consultants and officials care about. Consultants place more importance on both affordable housing, only significant at the 0.1 level, and on innovative planning techniques. All of the other differences between the two groups are negligible. Table 8 further reinforces this point, demonstrating that when rank ordered, both groups' planning priorities are very similar. The middle four values, moderately high importance in Table 8, are slightly different. Those in the public sector place a higher priority on intergovernmental cooperation, while consultants place a higher priority on innovation. Yet, both public officials and planning consultants rank the first 3 and last 2 planning values the same, indicating a remarkable level of consistency in prioritization between the two groups. Implications for theory and practice. Our findings lead us to 3 major conclusions about the role of the planning consultant and 3 major conclusions about the values of private practice planners and the officials that hire them. First, planning consultants add local planning capacity primarily in 2 ways. In some cases, consultants provide the professional planning workforce for smaller localities that cannot afford, or choose not to spend the funds on, regular in-house employees. In other cases, in localities that do have in-house staff, consultants expand capacity and enhance technical expertise primarily in terms of the more institution-setting functions that localities undertake periodically, particularly long-range master planning and regulatory reforms, rather than for day-to-day administrative functions. See Table 2 for the list of tasks most commonly performed by consultants. Second, public officials report that the use of consultants is more expensive than using in-house staff, while consultants report that the use of consultants is less expensive. One possible explanation for these contradictory assessments is that public officials, indifferent if not unhappy about needing to hire outside support, tend to overestimate the costs of doing so. Conversely, consultants, necessarily seeing value in their work and the efficiencies they can bring to it, correspondingly underestimate the costs. It is also possible that officials underestimate savings from hiring consultants because the expense. Lowe and Norton, Consultants and Local Planning. 145. Table 7. Comparing consultants and officials' views on planning issues. Summary. Consultants' view of consultants versus their view of clients' t-test significant? Consultants' mean is higher. Yes, 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 no, yes, 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 yes. Officials' view of officials versus their view of consultants' t-test significant? Officials' mean is higher. Yes, yes, no, yes, yes, and no, yes, yes, yes. Consultants' own views versus officials' own views. How much importance do you place on the following issues? Do you think your clients/consultants place on the following issues? Public participation, open space conservation, affordable housing, economic development, innovative planning techniques, collecting quality data, vertical consistency, horizontal consistency, intergovernmental cooperation. T-test significant? No, no, yesib, no, yesib, no, 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 no. Downloaded by Wayne State University at 1421 September 7, 2015. Notes: A. Officials rated consultants higher. B. Consultants' mean was higher. PR, TT, 0.10, PR, TT, 0.05, PR, TT, 0.01, two-tailed test. To hire them is an obvious line item in a budget, whereas the true cost efficiencies of using consultants come over time through the long-term savings that localities enjoy by minimizing the employment of regular staff overall, including legacy costs of full-time employees. Third, since both officials and consultants report that consultants most often engage in large-scale periodic planning tasks such as comprehensive plan updates, and consultants report that the most significant problem with the consultant-client relationship is navigating political. Table 8. Priority placed by public officials and consultants on planning principles and proxies for the 3 E's of sustainable development. P. High importance public participation, economic development, quality data, moderately high importance intergovernmental cooperation, vertical consistency, open space conservation, innovative planning, moderate importance horizontal consistency, affordable housing 8-9 and 8/9 consistency with neighbors, equity 4-5-6-7-6-7-5-4 cooperation with neighbors, consistency with county/state environment, innovation 1-2-3 1-2-3 engagement with constituents, economy, technical analysis/competence. C. Comments. Notes: P equals public officials, C equals consultants. Disputes in the client community. We suspect that planning consultants commonly play the role of the mediator and sometimes the lightning rod in a local planning process. Since comprehensive planning processes normally involve some type of community visioning or goal-setting exercise, the consultant must draft a plan that meets many needs and satisfies many masters. Planning consultants may enter into a relationship with a client community at a time when community leaders and citizens must make significant decisions about the future. This balancing act may be particularly tricky since planning consultants are often hired by city managers and elected legislative bodies such as city councils, yet spend most of their time interacting with either in-house planning staff or the Planning Commission, who may have different priorities and constituencies of their own. Our findings also suggest 3 interesting observations about professional values and norms. First, while the actual differences between public officials and planning consultants are negligible, each group collectively perceives itself to be significantly different from the other. Indeed, with a few exceptions, each group perceives itself to be more focused on the various planning principles we queried than the other group. The most plausible explanation for these results is that people tend to think more highly of their own commitment to their professional or disciplinary values than they do of others. These findings could also be evidence of some positional bias, where public officials tend to see 146 Journal of the American Planning Association, Spring 2013, Volume 79, Number 2. Themselves as comparatively more dedicated to planning principles than consultants, and vice versa. Despite these perceived differences, our second observation is that, at a broad level, planning consultants and public officials, as groups, generally profess to hold arrays of planning values and goals that are remarkably consistent with one another. Indeed, as Table 8 shows, the way each group ranked ordered the importance of their principles is virtually identical. At one level, these findings suggest that consultants are likely doing a good job of promoting their clients' goals, or at least that their own agendas do not, on the whole, substantially conflict with their clients' agendas. More profoundly, it suggests a remarkable degree of convergence in the professional values of practicing planners, or at least of those working in the public sector and those consulting to the public sector. Our final observation is that consultants are uniformly judged to place more importance in innovative planning techniques, both self-reported and as perceived by clients. Doing so makes sense for consultants from a business standpoint. Creating and learning about new planning tools could provide new ways to add value for clients and gain new business, as well as providing a way to differentiate consultants from competitors. To the extent this is happening, new ideas in planning may spread faster from consultants to clients than through any one individual community's in-house planning staff. If so, this finding suggests that one important benefit of using private consultants is to disseminate innovation in planning, and could counter the cookie-cutter argument against hiring consultants, if in fact consultants are disseminating best practices to lower capacity localities. These findings, especially differences between the apparent and perceived degrees of consistency in planning values and goals across consultants and client communities, and planning consultants' collective emphasis on innovations in planning, point to the need for additional research. Future research could undertake a more detailed assessment of consistency in goals between client community and consultant, particularly through paired analysis of given communities and their actual consultants, to understand how clients convey to consultants the planning goals they wish to emphasize, and how and to what extent consultants may influence their clients' own goals and values. There is also more to learn about 1. The extent to which and under what conditions the use of consultants actually provides efficiencies to localities in their planning-related activities relative to relying solely on regular in-house staff, and 2. What effects, if any, tend to come from the longer-term and systematic use of consultants rather than employing sufficient in-house staff in terms of the quality and policy content of plans, zoning codes, and other planning products and services produced. All of these topics are ripe for further exploration and analysis, and we encourage colleagues to take up this interesting and important topic of study. Conclusion. A large percentage of planners working today are employed in private practice. They are involved in every aspect of local government planning in the United States. Public sector planners and officials rely heavily on consultants to supplement staff capacity, conduct periodic projects such as comprehensive plan updates, and even act in place of staff in particularly low-capacity communities. Yet, until now, there has been no systematic study of planning consultants' role in the planning process, their values and priorities relative to those of public sector planners, and the advantages and disadvantages of using them in public processes. We asked both officials who hire planners and consulting planners what planning consultants typically do, and how they view the advantages and disadvantages of hiring consultants. We also assessed the degree to which consultants and the officials who hired them have the same planning values and how each group views the other's values. The resultant data allows us to assess ways in which planning consultants contribute to local planning practice. It also shows that planning consultants and the planning officials who hire them have remarkably similar professional values, in spite of their own assumptions to the contrary. This study provides more systematic detail than has been offered before. Using planning consultants is a trade-off with distinct advantages and disadvantages. Based on our survey, both consultants and their clients believe that the advantages of hiring consultants, including supplementing in-house staff, providing workforce flexibility, and offering technical expertise, outweigh the disadvantages of higher costs, according to officials, and lack of local knowledge. Moreover, consultants' nearly identical values to those of officials indicate that they are truly planners in private practice, no different from their public sector counterparts. While we take no particular stance on the trend toward outsourcing planning services, our study's results imply that consultant-client relationships may be viewed as partnerships in pursuit of the fulfillment of common planning values. Acknowledgements. We gratefully acknowledge the assistance of Ramona Mullahy, Dave Gaddis, and Margot Wheeler of APA in distributing the survey, and the staff of the Wayne State Center for Urban Studies in formatting and conducting the survey. Downloaded by Wayne State University at 1421 September 7, 2015. Lowe and Norton, Consultants in Local Planning. 147. References. APA/AICP. 2012 APA/AICP Planners Salary Survey. Retrieved from http://www.planning.org/salary/summary.htm Birch, E. 1980. Advancing the Art and Science of Planning, Planners and Their Organizations, 1909-1980. Journal of the American Planning Association, 46, 1, 2249. Burby, R.J., and May, P.J., 1997. Making Governments Plan, State Experiments in Managing Land Use. Baltimore, M.D., Johns Hopkins Press. Kanan, P., and Hennessy, M., 1985. Education in Social Impact Assessment and Planning. Journal of Planning Education and Research, 4, 3, 157163. doi 10.1177/0739456X85004003004 Carr, J.H., and Servan, L.J. 2009. Vernacular Culture and Urban Economic Development, Thinking Outside the Big Box. Journal of the American Planning Association, 75, 1, 2840. Dalton, L.C., 1986. Why the Rational Paradigm Persists: The Resistance of Professional Education and Practice to Alternative Forms of Planning. Journal of Planning Education and Research, 5, 3, 147153. doi 10.1177/0739456X86005003002 Deal, R., and Skively Slaughterback, C., 2009. Group Learning in Participatory Planning Processes, an exploratory quasi-experimental analysis of local mitigation planning in Florida. Journal of Planning Education and Research, 29, 1, 2338. doi 10.1177/0739456X09333116 Guard, A., 2008. City Sense and Suburban Design, Planners' Perceptions of the Emerging Suburban Form. Journal of the American Planning Association, 74, 3, 325342. Grijan, J., 2010. Outsourcing planning, what do consultants do in a regional spatial planning in the Netherlands? Amsterdam, the Netherlands, Amsterdam University Press. Hanna, K.S., 2005. Planning for Sustainability, Experiences in Two Contrasting Communities. Journal of the American Planning Association, 71, 1, 2740. Hibbard, M., and Lurie, S., 2000. Saving Land but Losing Ground, Challenges to Community Planning in the Era of Participation. Journal of Planning Education and Research, 20, 2, 187195. doi 10.1177/0739456X00020002005 Howe, D., Abbott, C., and Adler, S., 2004. What's on the Horizon for Oregon Planners? Journal of the American Planning Association, 70, 4, 391397. Downloaded by Wayne State University at 1421 September 7, 2015. Koplowitz, M.D., Hadlock, T.D., and Levine, R., 2004. A Comparison of Web and Mail Survey Response Rates. Public Opinion Quarterly, 68, 1, 94101. Kelly, E.D., 1993. Selecting and Retaining a Planning Consultant, RFPs, RFQs, Contracts, and Project Management. Planning Advisory Service Reports, Volume 443. Chicago, I.L., American Planning Association. Kolodny, R., 2007, April. One Agent Multiple Principles, A Theory of the Role of Political Consultants in the American Political System. Paper presented at the annual meeting of the Midwest Political Science Association, Chicago, I.L. McCann, E.J., 2001. Collaborative Visioning or Urban Planning as Therapy. The Politics of Public-Private Policy Making. The Professional Geographer, 53, 2, 207218. McClendon, B.W., 2003. A Bold Vision and a Brand Identity for the Planning Profession / Commentary. Journal of the American Planning Association, 69, 3, 221232. Norton, R.K., 2005. More and Better Local Planning, State-Mandated Local Planning in Coastal North Carolina. Journal of the American Planning Association, 71, 1, 5571. Punter, J., 2003. The Vancouver Achievement, Urban Planning and Design. Vancouver, BC, Canada, University of British Columbia Press. Reardon, K.M., Green, R., Bates, L.K., and Keeley, R.C., 2009. Commentary, Overcoming the Challenges of Post-Disaster Planning in New Orleans, Lessons from the Acorn Housing / University Collaborative. Journal of Planning Education and Research, 28, 3, 391400. doi 10.1177/0739456X083272559 Skively, C., 2007. A Quantitative Analysis of Consensus Building in Local Environmental Review. Journal of Planning Education and Research, 27, 1, 8298. doi 10.1177/0739456X0730579 Silver, C., 1996. John Nolan, Planner for the New South. Journal of Planning Education and Research, 15, 2, 7788. doi 10.1177/0739456X96015002001 Sokolow, A., 1987. Introduction, Small Governments as Newcomers to American Federalism. Publius, 17, 4, 113.